The law in Texas that bars abortions at 6 weeks went into effect early this morning. This is madness, of course. Now, it went into effect after the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Federal Appeals Court failed to rule on what was an emergency request to hear the constitutionality or not of this new Texas law. The request was brought by abortion providers in the state of Texas. And since the Supreme Court refused to even hear what the appeal was about, this means that the law, which, by the way, is the strictest in the nation, and as we've talked about before, bans abortion before many women even know they're pregnant. But the lack of intervention by the Supreme Court or the Federal Appeals Court means that this goes into effect unless there's further court intervention. It now becomes a rule in Texas, and it will be modeled by the other Christian fascist nations. Remember, this has not a damn thing to do with women's health, women's reproductive rights, women's privacy. It has everything to do, well, women's privacy, yes, but it has everything to do with slamming women back into the position that the Christian fascists in this country want them in. And that position is pretty much parallel to that of the Taliban in Afghanistan. It's just maddening what is going on. It's just absolutely insane. But thanks to the people who either did not vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 and who decided to withhold their vote as a protest against Hillary Clinton, I still fault you, son of a bitches. You're the ones that gave us Trump. You are the ones who gave us Trump, especially in the so-called battleground states. Look what you've done. And this was done. This is a part that is so ironic to me. You people who refused to vote for Hillary, made this big claim that you were the ultra liberals and Hillary was a fascist warmonger, which she may or may not be. But I'll tell you one thing she was not, and that is Donald Trump. But as a result of your arrogance, you people who refused to vote for her, we now have 3 Trump Supreme Court justices. Thanks a lot, you son of a bitches. Man, it just, these little things that happened over the course of the past, actually 40 years, where the liberals, so-called, never really mounted the kind of protests that they should have mounted. When the efforts by black folk in this country went on and fucking on of trying to establish equal protection under law, the rules that would protect black folk as well as white folk, white liberals just sat back on their asses and mouthed a lot of, I'm in complete agreement with that, and I'll go participate in a demonstration, but did nothing about voting people into office who would have protected or at least put into play equal protection under law in this country. So bit by bit over 40 years, and it wasn't just racial issues, women's issues, transgender issues. It just goes on and on and on. So that lack of dedication, that lack of interest, that refusal to wake up and smell the tyranny and the fascism that was closing in on this country, that's brought us to the point we're at now, politically speaking. So, what this law does is it allows private citizens anywhere in the United States to bring a civil suit against anyone who assists a pregnant woman seeking an abortion in violation of this ban. Now, how does Joe Christian Dumbshit in Missouri, how does he file a civil action against an abortion provider in Texas? What does Joe Dumbshit know about what's going on in Texas with a woman or an abortion provider? Well, Joe Dumbshit, Christian fascist, doesn't know anything. But he doesn't have to know. All he has to do is to go to a court in, I don't know, say Houston, whatever county that is. I forget the name of the county, and go before a magistrate or a state court judge and suggest that Dr. So-and-so has performed an illegal abortion. And that puts the machinery into motion. Whether or not Dr. So-and-so performed an abortion is immaterial. The fact that Joe Christian fascist dumb shit from Missouri can make the case now as if he had standing. I mean, whatever happened to the idea that someone who files a civil suit has to have some sort of standing in the case to bring the suit? Well, in Texas, they figured out, the Christian fascists, how to do this. Now, I'll get to that in a second. First, let me say that no other ban like this has been allowed to go into effect in the United States, even briefly, the 6-week bullshit. A Supreme Court analyst at CNN, and he's also University of Texas Law School professor, Steve Bladek, he said, quote, "What ultimately happens to this law remains to be seen. But now, through their inaction, the Supreme Court justices have let the tightest abortion restriction since Roe v. Wade be enforced for at least some period of time," end quote, because this will, obviously, it will be challenged. And this case comes as the Supreme Court is poised in the upcoming term, which begins the first Monday in October, as you know, to rule on the constitutionality of a Mississippi law that bars abortion at 15 weeks. Under the Texas law, abortion is prohibited when a fetal heartbeat is detected, which is often before a woman knows she's pregnant. And there is no exception in the Texas law to rape or incest, period. So if daddy dumb shit Christian fascist living in some rural junk shit little crossroads in Texas decides to mount his 15-year-old daughter and impregnate her, well, we're going to have a baby, daughter. This is, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. I can't. So the people who tried to get an emergency hearing from the Supreme Court argued that if this were allowed to go into effect, this Texas law, which it now has gone into effect, it would, quote, "immediately and catastrophically reduce abortion access in Texas, ultimately forcing many clinics to close," end quote. They also argued, the people who are against this law, in their emergency petition that the Supreme Court just ignored, they argued that if the law were allowed to take effect, which it has, it would have the impact of, quote, "barring care for at least 85% of Texas patients seeking an abortion." And it would mean that lawsuits could be filed against a broad range of people, including a person who drives their friend to obtain an abortion, someone who provides financial assistance, or even a member of the clergy who assists a patient. This is what the law in Texas has done. Have you ever driven someone to a clinic where an abortion was to be performed? I have. I've had friends who had no one to turn to, or for privacy reasons, have said to me something along the lines, "Hey, Mike, please, can you do this for me?" Sure. Now, under the Texas law, that sort of assistance to your friend means that you could be charged with a crime. Joe Biden lambasted the law. He called it extreme and a blatant violation of constitutional protection established under Roe v. Wade. I thought this was a settled issue. Well, I guess on a federal level it is, but it's soon going to be illegal in this country to get any sort of an abortion. You know this is coming. These son of a bitches have been working on this for more than 40 years. 50 years they've been working to completely destroy a woman's right to control her own reproductive system. Biden, in a statement today, said, quote, "The Texas law will significantly impair women's access to the health care they need, particularly for communities of color and individuals with low incomes. My administration is deeply committed to the constitutional right established in Roe v. Wade nearly 5 decades ago and will protect and defend that right," end quote. How? I'd like to ask President Biden, how are you going to protect and defend that right? It's out of your hands, pal. You don't pass laws. You don't make Supreme Court decisions. So what Biden is saying, protect and defend that right, is bullshit. It's just utter bullshit. There's nothing Biden can do. What can he do? He can use the so-called bully pulpit. It goes back to what I just said a few minutes ago. The cowardly pissants, these so-called liberals who refuse to vote for Hillary. How about for Jill Stein? Hey, she didn't have an ice cube's chance in hell, but it'll make me feel like I really made a statement. They're the ones who are to blame for this. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. As you know, we've switched formats and are now broadcast exclusively on the Progressive Voices Network. So that means you get fewer program interruptions, no corporate commercials, and lots of profanity. But our format change also means some of our radio listeners no longer hear the program. It's been a while since I mentioned our podcasts, so you may have forgotten that there is a way to listen to this program anytime you need a good dose of screaming. Visit MikeMalloy.com and subscribe to our podcast. As a podcast subscriber, you can download the program to your mobile device and take me with you wherever you go. And if you have a friend who needs a dose of truth-seeking, you can give a gift subscription as well. That's MikeMalloy.com, and never miss a minute of the uncensored fun and frivolity.